So another conversation here at the A2A Roundtable, and we're welcoming in Amobi to the Roundtable. I'm really excited to hear about this one, mostly because, as we discussed before we jumped on here, I had zero fiscal responsibility when I was a kid and as a young athlete. So I'm really looking forward to hearing a lot of the expertise that Amobi's going to bring to us. But to start out, Amobi, go ahead. I'm going to let you introduce yourself, kind of give us, your breakdown, your background. So go ahead.
No, most definitely. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here. I'm Amobi Okugo, first generation Nigerian American, born and raised in California. Grew up playing soccer and basketball until soccer took over. I had the fortunate pleasure of playing at a high level, and then which led me to ultimately go pro. Just recently retired, or I don't really like to use that word. Just recently moved on to my second game. And now doing stuff that I've been doing throughout my career, which is a frugal athlete and some business development, strategic partnerships, consulting, and you know, being talent, for content and stuff. So, trying to just be a facilitator across different platforms and businesses and see where it takes me. But excited to have this conversation.
That's great. That's great. So, with that, I'm gonna kind of turn it over to Reed. I know Reed's got some questions for you, so I'm gonna let Reed kind of take the reins here with this first question.
Yeah, Moby, thanks so much for jumping on the roundtable with us, man. I'm super excited to chat with you. And like Ryan said, I too am one of those guys that I would get my per diem check in college and it would disappear before the weekend was over. So I have to imagine there's a better way to do
So,
that.
no, most definitely.
So yeah. So to kick things off, man, I mean, the main demographic of kids that we work with, are high school kids that are moving into college. And so to be honest with you, a lot of those kids aren't really even, some of them are maybe managing a little bit of their own finances. A lot of them probably don't know much about it. What, in your opinion, is kind of the easiest way to start thinking about, managing your own finances? What's kind of that first baby step that you take in understanding how that works and kind of building quality habits in financial literacy and financial responsibility?
No, I think that's a great question to start it off. And yeah, Reed, it's long overdue. Glad we could finally connect officially. I think it start with what you have. A lot of times people say, "Well, I'm not making enough money. I don't even have, a job, or, not yet." And that's no excuse to not at least have the basics down. Before Steph Curry could shoot half court shots, he had to understand, a layup and free throws and dribbling and simple passing. So what you have, start with what you have. Start with what you have. Sorry, it was like not coming off my tongue properly. Um, Understand. All right, how much do I have coming in? How much am I spending on expenses? What do I have to pay for? Once you have those basic principles down, then you can understand, this is my budget. All right, this is my income to is what my savings goals are. And then as you kind of hash that down, now you can start building to the next step. All right, how can I start building ways to make revenue? What are some additional ways to make money? Okay, from there, what are some ways I can make my money work from? I only have so much time in the day. We talked about that offline. There's only so many hours in the day. All right, how am I going to be able to money make money on its own? So what investments are I looking at? What assets am I looking at? And then from there, it's like, all right, can I build a legacy? How am I protecting myself, in case of emergency fund, different things like that. And then continue to go up and up the pyramid as it gets more complex. But before you do that, you have to set the strong, because that's the base for everything.
I dig it, man. Yeah, and that's a really good point. It's funny. I now that I'm technically an adult, I guess you could say. I'll chat with some folks and whether it's financial advising or whatever it might be. And I've had multiple people tell me like, yeah, until you've got like 50K in the bank, I can't really help you. And I'm like, how is that possible? Like how many
Yeah,
people can you work with? And how does that person get there if they don't have financial tips to get there? So
exactly.
it's refreshing to hear somebody be like, no, learn with what you got, build from there. It's perfect. So, you know, based on what you're talking about here, it sounds like, just kind of, it could be as simple as building out, to start with, building out an Excel spreadsheet and just looking at, hey, what's my in, what's my out, and how can I
Facts.
maybe adjust this, or how do I want to adjust this, right?
Yeah, facts. Like simple, like even like Excel spreadsheet, a notepad, whatever you need to use that helps you, and then kind of go from there. And it's like, if you're like, oh, well, I'm not making enough money, then it's like, all right, more by subtracting. So addition by subtraction. If I'm spending money on different subscriptions, or if I need to like sell some things to make some more money for different things, that's something that you can do. Obviously, that's not going to be sustainable for a long period of time, but when you're initially starting, that's something that you can do right off the bat.
For sure. And I think these kids that are going from high school into college too, you're probably, I mean, that's the majority of what you're talking about, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I know I've done it. I'm like, oh, HBO's cool. I'll get that. Oh, Hulu is available to, oh, they're doing a bundle package for Disney. And
yeah,
I look up and I'm spending $75 on streaming services a month. And I'm like, I don't, what? Like, I don't even
yeah,
watch these. I don't know what I'm doing. So it can get away from you. So knowledge is power in that sense, right? I mean,
yeah.
understanding sort of what's going in, what's going out. And I think there's got to be something pretty cool about knowing like what can I live on and what is the excess, and having sort of the
Facts.
knowledge of like, okay, what, you know, I know this is what I need, and then these are things that I can control. I can either treat myself in these areas based on where I'm at right now. I can pull back on certain things based on where I'm at right now, and you're never in a position where you feel like you're out of touch on how to manage your month to month, which I think is such a powerful thing to have. So no, I really appreciate that feedback. I think that's awesome.
Most
Ryan,
definitely.
anything to? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Moby.
No, I was just saying, like you broke it down really well, like needs versus wants. You know, understanding like at the collegiate level, like, all right, I need a roof over my head, I need food, I need to make sure that some of the utilities are taken care of, and depending on where you're living, on campus versus off campus, some things are taken care of. So, all right, now that you've established your needs, okay, how do I decipher my wants from other wants? So maybe I want to go to Chipotle or one of the, you know, I don't want to say fast food, but fine dining spots like once a week versus maybe I do have time for different subscriptions or, different things like that that you accounted for. So I think it's really important to uh, break down the two needs versus wants.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. And I kind of want to backtrack a little bit. Now you have your own company. What really was the kind of the tipping point for you that said, I need to start this, right? Was it your own experience of being a frugal athlete, or was it people saying, "Hey, like you need to bottle this stuff and sell it," right? Was that kind of the thing?
Yeah, so it's a combination of both. Sometimes the best ideas. Uh, I'm kind of get off tangent real quick, but a mentor or I heard someone say this. What's the richest land in the world? And I like he was doing this at like a conference, and everyone was like, New York, L.A., and he was like the graveyard because that's where a lot of ideas never get materialized. A lot of people have great ideas, but they never act on them. So I always had that motivation in the back of my head. So I started a frugal athlete because combination of my own experience as kind of people used to call me cheap. So I try to put a spin on words, but also I had some people challenge me, from the idea that I had. And I'm fortunate that I did it. It's been able to, connect me with the likes of you, so many other people in the space. I've been able to learn a lot of, valuable skills that will help in my other endeavors as well. And happen if I didn't start it, So yeah, it's a real blessing, and I'm thankful for the people that have supported me along the way.
Yeah. So as you're kind of developing your own company and working through it, obviously you have to take some of your own advice, right? Because when things are
Yeah,
in its infancy, you can't go from A to Z, right? You got to have
yeah.
ABC. So what are some of the foundational things and foundational points that you implemented in your own business that you try and bestow in some of the people that you work with?
No, that's a great point and great question. I think for me, is getting the operations in order first and foremost, because in order to scale, that's something that you need to have down pat because it can get out of hand to build. And then for me, it's like, all right, what solution, or sorry, what problem am I trying to solve? So what solutions am I providing? A lot of times people do for vanity metrics, and early on, I didn't have a clear idea of what problem or what area I was addressing, and it was more just like, we're doing a cool thing and we're highlighting different subject matters and talking about financial literacy, but it's like, all right, why would someone want to go on a frugal athlete? What are they going to take away from it? And then as I established that, built the foundation of the structure and how we're going to go about it and the systems and processes. The systems and processes are major. Like if that's one thing I would recommend for anyone starting a business, make sure you get your systems and processes down, and then kind of go from there. So that's like my kind of like 3-step strategy. Get the structure right, get all your paperwork, operations in order, who's on your team, all the legal stuff that you need to get done. Um, then get your systems and processes. So for me, if I'm doing a podcast, what's the step-by-step process for doing it? If I'm doing a blog, how's it getting, it's distributed. And then third, what solution am I solving? What problem am I solving? What solutions am I providing? And then if you get those 3 steps down, you give yourself a head start to be successful in any type of business that you're doing.
Mhm. So like, it sounds like the process has to, create the end result, which is
Mhm.
one of the things that, we try and make sure that we're doing with A2A is no matter, what it is. And when we're in our meetings, we're like, okay, well, what's the process? Where are we starting and where are we going? Right.
Mhm.
Now, as things start to develop on the financial sports angle with these athletes in college now being able to take advantage of NIL, how have you seen these things change? And with these college and universities, some of them are starting to look into making sure that their athletes are taking these financial literacy courses and really understanding what it is to make the amount of money that they're making, right? So how have you seen kind of the landscape of financial literacy start to change as NIL is starting to come into place and these athletes are able to make money off their name, image, and likeness?
Yeah, it's long overdue, first and foremost. And like, quick shout out to some of the schools that are taking an emphasis on actually teaching financial literacy, and not just because there's money involved now, but making sure that, it's not only enough to have money or to make money, but to learn how to manage it and properly, handle. Because at a younger age, you're more liable to, different different routes when you have money. When you have money. So for NIL specifically, and the colleges that are getting involved, I think it's a great feat, and it's a great subject matter that not only student athletes need, but any athlete, any individual needs. So I, for one, am very excited about it. And as it pertains to some of the, I think it's a great service, and hopefully it can be transferred across all the divisions, all the schools, because whether or not you make it pro, or whether or not you're making money from NIL, you're going to have to deal with finances in some way, shape, or form, whether while you're playing or after you're playing. So I think it's really good to see.
One of the things we talked about, in A2A when the NIL stuff that came out, was April was going to be a rude awakening for some of these kids.
Yeah.
We haven't seen necessarily a lot of public fallout from that, which I'm happy to hear. It tells me that there maybe was a little bit more going on behind the scenes than we expected, as far as kids kind of getting resources that they needed, or they all deferred to July, and we'll find out in July. So we'll
Yeah.
kind of see how that goes. But to focus on you a little bit more here briefly, Amobi, can you tell us a little bit about A Frugal Athlete as far as the specific services that you guys offer and what you do, and sort of where y'all exist, kind of the demographics that you work with and different things like that. I want folks to be able to hear more about kind of what you guys as A Frugal Athlete are doing.
No, I appreciate that. So a frugal athlete is a social media platform that promotes prudent financial practices and smart career decisions amongst professional athletes and student athletes. So our major goal, our mission is to help athletes and student athletes make, manage, and multiply their money through financial education and athlete empowerment. So if you look at our business, we break it down into 4 main categories. One being, content. So we strictly, curate content around financial literacy, personal finance, wealth management, but from an athlete perspective. So you're seeing roadmaps of athletes that have done it the right way, getting to understand, different nuances and insights around personal finance, wealth creation, money management, brand, all these different things from athletes and stakeholders that help athletes, kind of make money from a business perspective. So that's one arm, content. Then we have another arm is workshops and speaking engagements. So we'll come in with schools or companies, organizations and do different workshops around financial literacy, um, money management, career development. Some things that we've done is rookie mistakes. So we kind of highlight the top rookie mistakes that athletes make from a money perspective, and kind of give like a guideline of how to avoid those. Balling on a budget is a workshop that we do. Life after the buzzer is a keynote that I've done. So that's another arm of our business as a whole, is consulting and coaching. So whether you're a collegiate or young professional athlete, usually the, the demographic for the coaching specifically is that collegiate to young athlete, because once they hit their second contract, they hopefully have moved on to advisor or a financial team, or they don't even listen to me because they're making a little bit more money, where they're dealing with higher level discussions. But we try to get them in that sweet spot to kind of change their behavior around how they handle money. We help them out with different budgeting templates, savings goals, kind of being like a pseudo accountability partner, pseudo financial coach. And then we do consulting with different brands and entities on how to curate and create financial content that will better engage their audience, specifically athlete community. And then uh, the fourth one is through our content, it's almost an extension of our content, sponsorships, brand campaigns, affiliate marketing. So if we have like a podcast series, financial company X wants to sponsor it, so it'll be a Frugal Athlete podcast presented by, a Frugal Athlete workshop presented by, different
Hmm.
things like that. We also have our merch. So I'm not sure if you can see it, merch, apparel, different things like that. Um, but that's kind of a Frugal Athlete from a bird's eye view, and hopefully we can continue to grow. In terms of our target audience, we definitely want to cater to that high school to young professional athlete range, and then like the athletes that are just retired. Our demographic is, we try to liken ourselves to where, for the elite athlete, the elite middle class athlete, unfortunately, not every athlete is going to have the opportunity to be LeBron James or Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, Tom Brady, Serena Williams. Um, that have made it to an elite level, but just the middle class elite athlete. And hopefully our information, it gravitates to some of their wants.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a full suite of offerings, man. That's why I wanted you to talk about it, because I couldn't remember all of them off the top of my head, and I knew there was a
No, I
lot there
appreciate it.
for a lot of people to
Sometimes I,
benefit from.
sometimes
So
yeah, sometimes I just go on a tangent, but appreciate
no,
you giving me the space to do it.
I dig it, man. No, and there's a passion there, right? Which I think makes such a difference. There's a difference between just putting your money into a calculator online or whatever and having somebody spit out what you should spend on whatever else. I feel like I've seen so many CNBC tweets that come out where they're like, "What you should spend in a typical day," and like those things
Yeah,
just get run into the ground and made fun of because those people have no idea what's going on. Like, I
yeah,
appreciate that there's someone there that has the passion and cares enough to get in there and talk about it. I am curious, has the reception of A Frugal Athlete changed in the last, I want to say, I mean, maybe I've been under a rock or something, but in the last 18 months or so, I feel like the mindset has shifted with sports fans around these folks like Steph, like LeBron, like Serena, who have embraced Tom Brady, who have embraced the business side of being an athlete and embraced the fact that that is going to be their generational wealth, or that is going to be their long-standing wealth. I mean, I think Tom just signed like a broadcasting deal that is worth more than like what, the last 20 years of his career or whatever. Like,
yeah.
it's some
It's wild.
preposterous number. Serena has gotten some crazy amount of venture fund money. Steph is like, I mean, you just go down the list. I feel like that is something that when I was growing up and looking at athletes, like I never knew about that, or it never got talked about or anything. And now I feel like the players who are being celebrated the most are the ones who've been able to diversify essentially their portfolio, and then how they've been able to provide value in their life and around the people around you. Has that, I mean, have you seen a direct implication on people wanting to know more about the financial side of things because of what is going on at the elite level and how those players are showing influence?
Yeah, most definitely. You hit the nail on the head. I think, like you said, and I know we talked offline about this. It's just when you see it, it's more tangible. It's you're able to touch it. So now we see, obviously we can't compare ourselves to, you know, the LeBron James and the Kevin Durant's of the world, but when you see yourself kind of follow that guideline or follow that roadmap, whether it's on your own scale or whether it's on reaching their scale. So for me personally, especially with, you know, the exposure from a media standpoint and the covering of different athlete entrepreneur, athlete curator, athlete investor moves, but also the introduction of NIL, it's making it kind of an open playing field for any athlete to kind of create their own little conglomerate and kind of go from there. So with the Frugal Athlete, we just came at the right time because we were a little bit earlier than most, and you know, a lot of people look to us as, you know, major contributors, subject matter experts, however you want to call it or however you want to see it. So it's been fruitful for us to be part of those conversations.
To
Dig
kind
it.
of piggyback off of what Reed is saying about, you know, these athletes looking more at the business side, you know, and for me, I attribute it to the life after, you know, competition's over. And that's
Mm-hmm.
something that, you know, you see with LeBron having his own TV show. When, you know, I think when we were kids, the biggest thing was, you know, Michael Jordan having a shoe and guys
Yeah.
having a shoe or having apparel, right? And having gear or something that would transcend them from being an athlete to having some sort of piece of the business pie. But like you said, now it's LeBron with a school, him with a show. You know, all these different athletes are trying to collaborate with all these different other, you know, whether it is media and really just trying to take hold of their own persona. And with that, you know, it takes more business savvy. So like, have you seen, you know, with the demographic of people that you work with, that they're looking more towards that type of thing at an earlier age because they're starting to see it with the LeBrons, the Kevin Durants, you know, the different football players that are getting into things. I mean, um who was it, the football player that just had an NIL deal with Nike, wants to work with Nike and has his own crypto, Kayvon Thibodeau. So, you know,
Mm-hmm.
that was his NIL deal to have his own crypto and have an NIL deal with Nike. And you know, obviously going to Oregon, he's in tight and he talks about the business aspect of things and that he wants to eventually work for Nike. Are you seeing more people and more athletes that you work with have that sort of mindset where they're like, okay, yes, I'm an athlete, but what is this going to provide me on the business end of it?
For sure. Yeah, we see it across the board. It doesn't matter if you're a young player, a veteran, a, you know, female athlete, male athlete. Everyone is looking at it from a business perspective now, and athletes are looking at it from not just the typical endorsement deal, but, you know, equity deals as well. Not just from the creator standpoint, but how can I own something? How can I start something? And to be honest, to see it across the board is, you know, is really inspiring and really motivating to see the changing of the landscape. You know, no longer are we just doing the typical franchise deals or, you know, endorsement deals, but trying to figure out a way to be proactive in these type of opportunities that not only we are part of, but we can create. And, you know, for a Frugal Athlete to not only highlight some of the stories, but, you know, be a part of those discussions, it's really cool to see.
Yeah, and it seems like, you know, as the years go by, and you know, NIL obviously made it explode, but as you saw more and more of these athletes signing deals with Nike, signing
Yeah.
deals with Adidas, and it just became more of a prevalent thing. That was, you know, that was the next step of being an athlete, was getting into business. You know, hopefully each one of these athletes is being smart with their money. And as Reed said, you know, we haven't seen, you know, any media articles or anything come out where, you know, they're getting in trouble with the IRS because they have
Yeah.
to, you know, create an LLC for all this NIL money that's coming in. But, you know, was that one of the things that when you saw NIL, you know, what were some of the things that came to mind outside of it being a good thing that you were like, I hope that they educate these kids about X? You know, what were some of those things that you were thinking of as these things came about?
Yeah, first thing I was thinking, I was like, damn, I wish I could go back in time because I was at UCLA. But for me, I think it was, you know, all right, everyone's telling people how to make money, like the opportunities there, but they're not telling them, you know, the implications of not doing your taxes, the different things when it comes to taxes, you know, making money in select states, properly setting up yourself between am I 1099 contractor versus W two employee, Am I doing business as versus do I have a set up myself employed LLC? All these different things that they're not helping with. They're just saying, all right, NIL's here. You're allowed to make money. Here's the ways that you can make money, and then go do your thing. So there wasn't really a process of, I don't want to say babysitting, but there wasn't a process of making sure that, putting the rail guards in place on the road ahead. It was basically open road, open season. Depending on how fast you're driving, you may be susceptible to falling off the road. Whereas if there's like
Yeah.
rail guards that some of these organizations could have implemented, I think we would have started off at least on the front foot. Obviously, it's a learning process for everybody because it's so. But that's what, if we had the magic ball, we would conjure.
So talking about the different financial implications for these kids in NIL, I want to shift focus just a little bit and move over to uh, student loans, which is something that the vast majority of families are going to have to look at one point or another. I mean, I know there's the hope of an athletic scholarship, and for some sports and some positions that can help you more than others. But when you look at loans, they aren't they're very broad in what they allow you to spend those loans on, and they're very broad in what they allow you to pull loans out for. A lot of the times they don't necessarily
Yeah.
tell you, hey, tuition and fees is this, or cost of attendance is this, so we're going to give you this. It's usually this plus whatever. And I know friends of mine who in college or whatever it might be, would buy Xboxes with leftover financial aid money and things like
Yeah.
that. And yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
and can you just talk a little bit about, like, educate us, like we're five, on like how interest rates work and some of that kind of stuff, and what that impact is on you financially if you decide to take out more than what you need for these student loans to maybe do things that in the moment feel great but maybe won't be worth the price X that it's going to be in 4 years once it's had a chance to build up whatever it's going to cost.
Yeah, most definitely. And so they say compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world because of how it benefits you if you invest from a positive standpoint. But if you owe, it can be just as detrimental to you from a student loan or interest standpoint. So understanding that concept of interest, both the positive and the negative, is really important when it comes to student loans and owing and being in debt. I think understanding the different nuances and terminology. So, different things like APY, annual percentage yield versus annual percentage rate, and understanding what exactly you owe over the course of your principal, over the course of your interest, over the course of how many years, how it can affect your credit, what key factors play a role in your credit score, in your credit history, all these different things. Um, People just see the buy now and then pay later and kind of take full advantage of it, but later always comes, and later comes before you know it, collects more than what you pay now. So I think to understand when you're buying something in the immediate, uh, preferably to on what you're paying specifically, try to do that. If it's an asset, I know we talked about, assets versus liabilities. If you're investing in assets, all right, there's different ways to what's considered good debt versus what's considered bad debt, and how you establish some of the things that you need to pay for. But at that age, as a collegiate student athlete, there is ways where you can get yourself behind the eight ball simply because of uh, the phenomenon behind credit and buying now but paying later. Like, oh yeah, I'll have money down the road, and it's before you know it, you have money down the road, but it's all going towards the things that you paid for way back when you thought it was sweet. So we can go on and on about this topic, but yeah, it's unfortunate that people find out too late.
Yeah, and I want to key on one thing that you said there because I want to dive into it a little bit more. Like you said, we can go in a lot of different directions on this, but you mentioned good debt and bad debt. I think there's folks who are not as familiar, especially like high school, college age kids,
Yeah.
probably don't know what that means. Can you give us some examples of say for a college kid, an example of good debt versus bad debt, and what that differentiation is.
Yeah, so most definitely, and this is all subject to the person, but I will
Hmm.
highly recommend that you consult with your financial team, financial advisor. We are not financial advisors, but we do hopefully share information for informational, educational purposes. But for me, bad debt is things that don't have a return on investment over the course of the duration of what you bought and how long you're using it. Usually, those are the things called for like discretional spending with the credit card, um, a car payment, depending on how you're using it. If you need to get to where you need to get to, sometimes that a car can be considered good debt. But it's more in the standpoint of buying things that are a liability over the course of the duration of how what you bought and how long. Whereas good debt is something that is going to give you a return on your investment. So, for example, something that we all have to deal with in some way, shape, or form. Some people get scholarships, some people don't. But college, the it's it's on paper a good debt because you're using college to potentially set yourself up for the rest of your life in the form of a career, a job, something that's going to pay you back over time. Another form of good debt is a house, real estate, something that you're going to be able to live in, whether you live in for the rest of your life or you rent out, or that real estate is going to have value that you can later sell on or keep for generations to come. And not a lot of money, sorry, not a lot of people have the amount of money that it takes to require to purchase a house right away. So you have to, put a loan out, incur some debt to make sure you get that asset. Um, an investment in yourself. So, for example, if I need to be, if I want to get into coding, if I want to be a software engineer, and I take a boot camp, a 12-month boot camp, coding boot camp, if I, have to put it as debt, I do know over time that's going to turn into an asset because now I'm a software engineer. I'm able to get a high paying job, rather than, okay, I'm going on vacation. I don't have the cash to pay up front. I'm going to put it on my credit card and I'll pay back over time. Like, obviously, the experience was nice, but that's something that is a liability because over time, you're losing money. So
Hmm.
that's the kind of the difference between good debt and bad debt.
So, Moby, one of the things that I like to ask everyone, obviously, you always want to see what the highs are, but you also need to know what the lows are, what the pitfalls are. So, what kind of mistakes or pitfalls or things that you've seen either with people that you've worked with or just in your field? What are some of those things that you've seen?
The biggest mistake, and we touched on it on our rookie mistakes course, but the biggest mistake I've seen is income creep. Also known as lifestyle creep, is like obviously you're making a certain set of money and then you have your expenses, but then as you make more money, your expenses increase with it. So there's never really that true moment to build wealth, and that's the difference between being a high, being rich and making a lot of money versus actually being wealthy and creating like a true portfolio that stands the test of time. So you know the biggest difference is building that gap between your income, how much money you're making, and how much money you're spending. And it's easy for athletes to fall into that trap. Anyone for that matter, but we're going to keep it on the topic of athletes to fall in that trap of I make money, I spend money. I'm going to make more money based on my play, and then I'm going to spend more money. But in order to really build true wealth, you need to make sure that you're making more money, you're finding ways for your money to make more money, and then you're keeping your expenses at a proportionate level.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think I've definitely been victim of that, right? Where you get that first job, and you're like, all right, cool, like I can afford these things. You
Yeah,
get a promotion, you get a second job, and you're like, oh, I can afford more things now,
yeah.
right? So that's kind of how things start to work out. So I can definitely see that as being one of the pitfalls. And one of the other things is, you know, are you what type of or at least what age demographic of athletes are you working with the most?
Mostly that like those young rookies. So like they just graduated or they just stepped foot into the professional ranks, and they're looking to try to get on the right footing. They want to give themselves a head start. That they're making their own money. They know what they have to spend. They know kind of the lay of the land when it comes to their day-to-day schedule. They may not be ready for those complex terms, but they want to know more and they want to get associated or connected with people that can point in the right direction. So, as a financial coach, kind of accountability coach, um, pseudo manager role, helping them, kind of find the right alternatives, ask the right questions, and also give them kind of the standing and resources for them to, you know, set themselves up, whether it's a budget template, whether it's like, a network tracker, whether it's a list of different apps that they can use to help manage their stuff, and then kind of go from there.
For those athletes, Moby, I'm curious, are you guys kind of well, first off, are you saying this to them? And second off, are you the first ones who seem to be sort of driving this point home, this reality that for athletes specifically, performers, athletes, I feel like they all sort of fall into this category where you can have a really high income and that can go away quickly and aggressively based on numerous factors that are sometimes in your control and sometimes out of control. And that's the fact in college too. You can have an NIL deal up until your team loses 4 games, and now all of a sudden people aren't as interested in giving you that money. Or
Mm-hmm.
you can be, you can have all of this wealth or sign this big contract in a professional capacity, and then you get hurt or something happens, and so they bring somebody in at your same position, and now all of a sudden you're not needed and you get lost in the shuffle in the trade deadline or whatever it might be. I mean, are you guys really trying to hammer home the fact that like for them especially, like that can go away kind of like that, kind of just in a snap?
Yeah.
I mean,
My dad said it to me the best way. You're closer to the end of your career than the start of it, and he said it like immediately after I got drafted. And it's a tough predicament to be in because you're a professional athlete, and you're supposed to be invincible, but you have to have that mindset that it can go away at any moment. Not only to give you an appreciation of the game and the blessing that you have to play every day, but to understand the moves that you have to make from a financial and money standpoint, to be cautious of what may unfortunately happen next or at a moment's notice.
yeah, I mean, I feel like I struggle with that mindset literally going from like high school into college. Like it was tough for
Hmm.
me to even get there. And then to think like at that next level, now someone is literally paying you money to do this sport.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be such a hard mindset shift. And you've got coaches and everybody telling you, hey, we're great. Everyone that exists in their life, and I had it myself, and I think most athletes have it, 99.9% of people around you are only talking about the current and only talking about your life as it pertains to your athletics. And so to
Exactly.
have somebody come in finally and talk to them about, literally anything beyond that or anything that isn't that, would think would be a little bit tougher for certain folks. Or are you meeting with people who are finding you because they realize that has to happen? I'm curious what that barrier to entry is sometimes with these players.
Sometimes it comes in a number of different ways. Sometimes people will listen to a podcast and they're like, oh wow, like I really gravitated toward what you said. Some people like really seek out, or like maybe I do like a speaking engagement or a keynote or a workshop, and they like, come after and like leave a message or write an email. And then some of it's just through the content that people share on socials. So it's a combination. Everyone's gonna have to find their own path. Um, Not so much outbound in the sense of like I'm reaching out to players and saying, yo, I know you're doing this, this, and this. I would love to help you. None of that. We feel like we can get them through organic content and organic exposure to the resources that we provide, and then hopefully if they need additional services, like financial coaching, then that comes. But that's not like our main source of building a business. It's kind of complementary to the content and the workshops and the speaking engagements, and then kind of go from there.
Hmm.
So I have my final question. Then I think I'll turn it over to Reed for one as well. What made you um, what made you a frugal athlete? Was it your dad in your ear? I mean, he already had some advice, about, as soon as you got drafted, or was it seeing other athletes that had success lose it? What was the catalyst for you to be that type of person, even before you were espousing all of these things for all these other different types of athletes?
I think for me, I've always been a frugal athlete. I was the kid that was selling extra chicken wings in elementary school to make money because I didn't get allowance. So I've always been trying to be efficient, economical, and prudent as it pertains to my career and the capital that I'm making. But it just really expanded as I started making my own money, and started being able to take care of myself and my family as a professional athlete. I joked around that people used to call me cheap, and then a frugal athlete was a way to kind of take control of the word, um, take a new meaning. But for me, always knew sports wasn't going to last forever. So it was like using sports as a vehicle to be that springboard for what I'm currently doing now, and that's kind of the epitome of a frugal athlete. I think the Broke documentary and seeing other athletes kind of live their lives definitely sparked me to build it out. But internally, I was always a frugal athlete.
Man, I remember watching that Broke documentary too. They made us watch it my first year in college. That was like
Oh
my first
wow,
introduction to like,
yeah,
yeah, that was my first introduction to like, hey man, it
yeah,
can go away. Like it, so that was wild. My last question, what what's your favorite like financial hack? And it can be applicable to our kids or whatever, but like is there
yeah.
something that like what was the like a biggest epiphany financial hack that you found where you're like, oh shoot, like that's a game changer.
I'll show you real quick. Don't mean to spin down, but so it was a challenge that was given to me, and it was basically like take a notebook and bring it around with you everywhere. And anytime you spend money, write it down. So when you write it down, the mindset of like, it's just the mental note of writing things down makes it harder. I'm not gonna say harder, but it just puts it into a perspective because it's easy to swipe and swipe or pay cash and then all right at the end of the month or end of the week I'm gonna keep track of it. But when you physically write it down, then it gives you a whole new meaning of money. And not saying you have to do it for everything, but at least try it for like a week and then a month, and then you'll definitely have an appreciation for how you handle your money and what you need to do with it from a long-term standpoint.
That's awesome. I'm a little scared to do it, but now I'm gonna
Yeah,
have to and see how it
yeah,
shapes out. That's yeah,
yeah,
Yeah, sounds
very
like it
cool.
makes it a little bit more real when you write it down.
yeah, exactly. It makes it real. It makes it really real.
Yeah. Well, Moby, this has been great. Before we let you go, tell everyone, where they can find you, website, social handle, anything, kind of let them know where they can find you.
No, most definitely. Thank you guys for having me, and you excited for this fruitful relationship. You can find me at Amobi Says on all social platforms, at A Frugal Athlete on all social platforms, except TikTok. TikTok is just at Amobi Says. Uh, www.afrugalathlete.com, on LinkedIn as well if you want to get more business oriented. But yeah, available, always willing to connect, always down to collaborate. Uh, Thanks for sharing the space and providing a platform.
That's awesome. Well, it's been great. I really appreciate you sharing all the wisdom and your expertise with us throughout this conversation. It's been awesome. I'm gonna let you go. Reed, you got anything else for him?
I had a blast, man. Always appreciate you coming on, and Moby. Appreciate us getting a chance to chat, and this is the first of many, I'm sure.
Yes, sir. Most definitely. Appreciate you guys.
Likewise.